This is Viva Fry.
I'm Dr. Peter McCullough.
This is Tom Luongo.
This is Chuck Prodnick.
This is Alex Krainer.
Hey, this is Brad Wall.
This is JP Sears.
Hi, this is Frank Peretti.
This is Tammy Peterson.
This is Danielle Smith.
This is James Lindsay.
Hey, this is Brett Kissel, and you're listening to the Shaun Newman Podcast.
Welcome to the podcast, folks. Happy Wednesday. How's everybody doing today? Before we get on to today's show, how about we talk a little junk silver? Yeah, it refers to old circulation coins like dimes, quarters, half dollars, and dollars from back before our government debased our money by removing them from silver from coinage. You can find these coins at Silver Gold Bull. Many of these older coins are not only a solid investment, but if we ever get there, and with Carney now as our fearless leader, maybe those days are quickly becoming a reality. I don't know. But also, if they do, these coins, ideal for trade or barter, obviously, if the economy ever goes that way. And, I still hold I'm an optimist. I'm an optimist, okay? I believe better days are ahead. I want to make that adamantly clear. But I also go, what about holding just a little bit? Just a little bit, just in case we ever get there. And all you got to do is text or email Grahame down the show notes for deals about this feature and any other questions you may have around buying, selling, storing, or using your retirement accounts to invest in precious metals. You can go to silvergoldbull.com, silvergoldbull.ca. They ship anywhere in Canada, the United States, and all you got to do is reference the SNP. Bull Valley Credit Union is your Alberta-regulated, fully serviced financial institution, is proud to present the first in Canada gold collateral lending. Now you can lend against your physical gold and silver for favorable rates. It's like a HELOC on your gold and silver. And if you don't have any physical gold and silver, they can help you get a loan to purchase your gold and silver today. You can email Leanna to start your account, a BVCU membership at welcome@bowvalleycu.com. It's down in the show notes. You can also start an eMetals account today, and you can get all this information at bowvalleycu.com. Caleb Taves, Renegade Acres. When it comes to concrete, I tell you what, Caleb and his business, family, fantastic at it. So if you're looking for concrete, let me just throw a quick plug in there. And Stamp Concrete looks unreal. And if you're looking for somebody, shoot me a text. They've given up their spot for a community spotlight. We've been highlighting the Cornerstone Forum is heading to Calgary. It is now 59 days away. 59. So if you're dragging your feet on tickets, don't drag anymore. We've got an excellent lineup. I don't know. Excellent lineup coming to Calgary May 10th, and looking forward to seeing all you fine people there. Also, if you're a business, we got a trade show, all the hotel details, everything's in the show notes. Go check that out, and look forward to seeing you all there. If you're listening or watching on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Rumble, X, make sure to subscribe. Make sure to hit retweet, repost it, share it, all the good things. Look forward to, I don't know. Excited for this one, Tom and Alex. It's been a while. So make sure to share it out there with your friends, neighbors, and look forward to hearing all your comments. Now, let's get on to that tale of the tape. The first is a former research chemist, amateur dairy goat farmer, libertarian, economist whose work can be found on Zero Hedge and Newsmax Media. He hosts the Golds, Goats, and Guns podcast. The second, a Croatian national, former hedge fund manager, author, and contributing editor at Zero Hedge. I'm talking about Tom Luongo and Alex Krainer. So buckle up. Here we go. Welcome to the Shaun Newman Podcast. I'm joined today by Tom Luongo, Alex Krainer. Boys, it has been a stint. This is the 18th time, but I was thinking, Tom came on. I'm like, man, I feel like I haven't seen you. Kind of want to reach through the screen, give you a virtual hug. The last time you two were on, November 27th, 2024. That is a long time for us. So either I've been avoiding you, you guys have been avoiding me. I don't know what the heck's been going on. Lost in translation.
All right. If we're all being honest, I've been avoiding you.
Yeah, boy.
It's Canadians. At this point, I'm like, I hate y'all.
Well, we are booing your national anthem, it seems, Tom, every game, even here in Edmonton. I thought Edmonton will never boo it. They started booing it. We're removing all the liquor off of every shelf pretty much in every province that's American made. There's that. Yeah, it's been really interesting. I was kind of curious your guys' thoughts. We can go wherever you want today, but I just want to start on the fact we have a new prime minister.
Let's start with this U.S. Canadian war that we've turned everything into the South Park movie. We've gone to the war with Canada, and it's because it's indicative of a lot of things. It's indicative of the extent to which the world has Trump derangement syndrome, and how much the world actually hates America. And which I think is a very efficient and effective psyop of, Alex, you'll be shocked to hear, British origin and certainly European origin as well. And it's a cultural thing. It's a cultural thing. And we see it here in the United States. The same people that have that hate Trump here in the United States are the same people that hate Americans in Canada and hate Americans over in Europe. And it's the same cohort of people. And it's about, and I think it's a class warfare thing. I really do. I fundamentally believe that, we don't know our place in the global order of things, which is that we're just supposed to be, we're just about to boorish know-nothing Americans who have no right to stand up for themselves. And we're in a moment in time where we're watching. The best way to describe this, or one of the best ways to describe this, is as the kind of narcissistic family system problem. Right? This is important. It's a psychological thing. We have a group of, we have our parents, metaphorically speaking, are European, right? And we're always kind of looking for approval we've always been kind of looking for approval from them. And moreover, we have Canada, which was set up after the revolution or during the revolution to be the anti-United States. Because remember, the Canadians were asked to join the American Revolution, and y'all didn't. Y'all chose to stay with the crown, and then chose to fight with the crown in the War of 1812, which apparently is a big deal that you guys talk about, how you kicked our asses in the War of 1812. I know that's cope, by the way, on the part of Canadians, because today,
I don't know how much we talk about it. I mean, like, honestly,
I don't know, but I know that having spoken to some people about this, that this is taught quite explicitly in Canadian schools. That there's a version, Canada's version of history is very of that period. So let's just get through the rest of the metaphor.
Certainly, Tom. When it comes to Canadian hockey, we parade around how many times we beat you, and every once in a while, 1812 slips in there because we kicked their asses back to the White House. That is certainly in there, certainly.
And look, as far as hockey is concerned, no argument. Like it's not even an argument. I would prefer Western Canadian defensemen over just about everybody other than maybe Finnish third line centermen.
I'd take your goalies right now. I'd take your goalies.
Well, eventually we're going to get good at something. So, but this is what we're watching right now is literally us being treated as children of narcissistic parents who are like, dude, how dare you stand up for yourself? How dare you say, no, we're Americans and we don't want to fight your wars for you anymore. And we don't want to fund your social welfare states. And how can you, what do you mean you don't want to take care of us in our old age and our dotage? Like, what are you, out of your minds? What's wrong with you? And it's literally everywhere. And if you look carefully, you will see what I'm seeing, which is that we have a fifth generation information war being waged. Absolutely. And it's accelerated since the Zelensky meeting in the White House. Planes falling out of the sky, American ships running into each other. Elon Musk is now the new Hitler. Have you noticed this? Like at every turn, Elon Musk is now the new Hitler. And I have this on authority from people watching the German media, like a hawk going, oh yeah, absolutely. Every third headline is about how evil Elon Musk is. Like now this guy is throwing rockets up in the air and catching them. And then all of a sudden, two of them blow up in a row. There's a massive DDoS attack against Twitter yesterday.
Yeah.
They're now activating Blue Anons to blow up Cybertrucks all over the United States. This shit's coming. It's already here. We are now in a full-blown fifth generation information color revolution scenario in the United States over our declaring independence. And the way they're keeping everybody in the bubble is to say, see, Trump doesn't know what he's doing. Trump is engendering a global recession. Trump is going to kill the stock market. Trump is going to do this. Trump is going to do that. Trump is going to do all these things. When the reality is that all these fucking things are fake. The markets are fake. Everything's fake. And they're going to focus on the stock market. Has anybody noticed the rally in the U.S. bond market? Has anybody noticed the collapse between U.S. and European bond spreads? All this shit that I've been talking about for 3 years in the financial markets have all come to a head in the last 2 weeks since Trump cut off USAID and then started imposing tariffs. Everything is collapsing. And everything is happening. So what's going to happen next is they're pushing on all of this. So the dollar is getting killed. But capital is being repatriated back to Europe. That's why the euro's at $1.09. Same thing with the British pound. The UK US gilt spread, the 10-year spread was pushed up to near 50 basis points. Got news for you. The last time it was 60 basis points, the prime minister lost their job and a queen was killed. September 2022. BlackRock blackmailing the Bank of England over the pension crisis, all that stuff. That was at positive 60 basis points between the US and UK bond spread. It's all in the financial markets, guys. The real war is financial. And the kinetic war and the fact that we refuse to go to war for them to go and get their collateral that they think they have every right in the world to get is anathema. And we have to be brought to heel. And so if we can't be brought to heel, then we have to be destroyed. That's what's going on. And Canada's caught in the middle of it. And y'all are falling for the psyop. If you really wanted independence, you would demand that American whiskey be put back on the shelves. But you're not. Why? Because latently, y'all always hated Americans anyway. Same way that Europeans look down their nose at us. Same way that American liberals from the Northeast hate everybody.
Tom, I'm married to an American. I got a ton of time for Americans, but I know you're not talking about me.
No, I know. I'm talking about, like, mostly I'm talking about
the
Ontario
general
liberals.
Population. Yes,
I'm fact that Ontario liberals, Edmontonian liberals, yada yada yada. Like the upper middle, the ones that see themselves as superior, and they've been encouraged to see themselves as superior to Americans. Why? Because we swear. Because we drink beer and we like NASCAR? Fuck you. NASCAR was always better than Formula One. I'm going with this from here on out. But you know what's going on here, and you'll see it. You'll see it in the Anglophilia of America, of the American Northeast. I used to be one of these people.
Well, it's funny. There's a growing sentiment in Alberta, specifically Alberta, about if this continues to go the way Canada's going. You know, Mark Carney's now in. Like I can't see a bigger connection between the world globalist, elitist mindset than putting that guy in. I was just saying to you that, you know, like this stat shocks me. I want to pull it back up so I don't butcher it. This was Sheila Gunn Reid with Rebel News. She had said that the Liberal Party disqualified 250,000 of the 400,000 registered Liberals on the eve of the leadership election. And then I had another guy who was just on say that Carney polled higher than Putin in his election, right? It's so blatantly obvious here in Canada, yet what we're doing is we're focusing on the United States. We're we're being told to pull all things American. Meanwhile, we're getting 100% tariffs on canola and a few different things from China. And that doesn't even make the headlines. And you might argue the dollars aren't equal because obviously the United States is our largest trading partner. But it's interesting to just watch it play out on this side, right? And the story plays on, I guess.
So the one last thing, and then I'll let Alex come in here and let him talk me off a ledge here. But the thing with China announcing reciprocal tariffs, that's China's statement that they're siding with Trump against Europe. Alex, what do you think about all this?
Can you say that again? What did China do?
China put reciprocal tariff. China went along with the United States and put reciprocal tariffs on Canada.
Oh, right. Well, look, I was watching rewind for a second. So everything you said, Tom, is about what I was going to say, except you said more things. I was gonna say that I find it very, very strange that practically from the day Donald Trump was inaugurated, the dollar euro sharply reversed, but like sharply reversed, went from below $103 to the euro to 109 plus 109.3 something today. In FX markets, this kind of move between two major currencies is very, very highly unusual. The S&P 500 in the past few days, the Nasdaq, it feels like the United States is under attack. Twitter's under attack, allegedly originated from Ukraine hackers. This is very clearly, well, I can't say very clearly, but this is very likely an economic attack against the United States, because exactly as you say, this is the playbook of the empire. You know, as they did when they attacked Chile, and Kissinger said, first you have to make the economy scream. So when the economy goes to shit, then everybody turns around and blames Trump for it. And then they do their dirty work and try to sideline him, sabotage him, make him relent, make him ask for ceasefire. And China, yes, it is very clear that something's going on there, because I watched Trump's press conference about 2 days ago or 3 days ago, whatever it was, and some reporter asked him something about China, and he said, "Yeah, we have a very good relationship. I have a very good relationship with Xi Jinping." And he said, "You don't hear me talk about the China virus anymore, do you?" And then he said, "Yeah, I talked to Xi Jinping." And then almost as a side note, he said, "We talk a lot." He said that. We talk a lot. So there's no doubt in my mind that something's going on that we're not being told, and that there's a new and a real fault line is forming now between United States, China, and Russia on the one side, and then the old colonial oligarchic Europe on the other side. And the old oligarchic colonialist Europe has its satellites, you know, Canada, one of them, Australia, New Zealand,
Hong Kong.
Wobbly. Is it still, you think? Japan. And it seems to me that it's one of those situations where you can't be transactional. You can only be strategic, in the sense that you have to choose your side. So you can't favor the empire, the globalists, the Davos crowd and London a little bit to, profit off of this and that situation, and then oppose them a little bit on other issues, because then you're trying to sit between two chairs and you're going to fall on your ass down. You have to choose where you're sitting.
Yep.
And so, judging by, obviously Trump cannot come out and say in public, "Hey, guess what? We're siding with Russia and China," because, people would go crazy. But, you get these very subtle jabs against the Brits, against the Europeans, the behavior when Macron comes to visit, Starmer comes to visit, Andrzej Duda comes to visit, Zelensky comes to visit. You can see that they've chosen their side, that they're talking a lot with China, they're talking a lot with the Russians, and you can see that the other side are losing their shit. And so now, and I think this is a sign of weakness and impotence, they're attacking with everything they've got. They're attacking their economy. They're like, Elon Musk is a Hitler, Orange Man bad. They're attacking X. They're having these, whoever this is, Antifa, Black Lives Matter, whoever the hell it is, they're attacking Tesla dealerships. But guess what? These are acts of war.
Yes, they are.
The American nuclear doctrine says that they might employ nuclear weapons in case of attack against the United States. And then when they list all kinds of attacks that they consider as legitimate provocations to merit a nuclear response, it includes cyber attacks. And Twitter is not just some private, website, social media platform. Twitter is a strategic asset of the United States. People need to understand that Elon Musk is a frontman, as all these oligarchs are, of state actors.
Mm-hmm.
And so attack on Twitter, I'm 100% sure is going to be taken with utmost seriousness. And there's going to be very, very serious warnings going out to the Brits. Because, if the attacks are coming from Ukraine and it's not the CIA doing it, or, maybe rogue CIA elements, but we can imagine there's probably MI6 behind it. The Mossad's probably behind it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not the Russians. It's not the Chinese. And so that's an act of war. So how do you respond to an act of war? You probably respond through a different kind of asymmetric warfare, which we don't know what it's going to be, but it's going to be something. And then last thing I wanted to say, the way for the United States to defend themselves from economic attack, and this might be where we talk a lot comment comes in, is that the United States is going to go maybe sooner than we know to a dual currency system. They're going to do like the Chinese, where they're going to have an external dollar and an internal dollar.
Yes.
And so the external dollar is going to be used for foreign trade. The internal dollar is going to be for domestic transactions. And that way, the United States is going to be able to insulate itself from external shocks and from attacks, as Chinese have been able to insulate themselves. And guess what? They haven't had a financial crisis in 40 years, whereas we in the West, we get financial crisis every couple of years.
That's right.
And so I think that this is under consideration under the Trump administration, and the attacks that they are sustaining at the moment all over the place, they're going to have to respond. And 100% they're going to be coordinating those responses with the Chinese and with the Russians.
Alex, on all of those points, thank you for bringing that up, because that is, I think, the key to the understanding here is the two-tiered monetary system, which you and I have been talking about this. I've been talking about it for almost 2 years now. And now let's go back and let's put some pieces together, right? Breadcrumbs. Let's go back 3.5 years to me talking about SOFR versus LIBOR and all of this stuff, and the Fed specifically putting very specific programs in place that if the foreign markets need dollars, they have to go to the Fed to get them. Okay, they can't go to the shadow banking system to get them in the United States. They can't go to the American banks because the American banks stopped taking European debt, for example, as repo collateral, which is what started the SOFR crisis of 2019, which is what eventually gave us COVID. All of this is part of the financial warfare layout. So again, in very broad strokes, what I've been thinking is that we're going to have a domestic dollar. The Fed is going to be the arbiter and going to be the transmission system for international dollars. And, and also a source of domestic credit. We're pricing of domestic credit, but the domestic credit markets can operate on their own. We don't need the Federal Reserve to regulate the domestic credit markets. We need the Federal Reserve to be there as a backstop in case the domestic credit market seize up. That's it. Lender of last resort. Go back to the original conception of the Federal Reserve, right? So, with all of that in mind, I think all of that infrastructure has already been set up. And that goes back to what I was saying originally. How did we avoid the worst of the Biden junta? We did it through the financial markets. How did Trump survive? How did Trump even get inaugurated? Unless there were loyalist factions within the U.S. military and or intelligence services backing his play. Okay, there's an entire unseen war that's happening, and all we have is the reflection of that war that we see in the headlines. But there's a war over here, and we're looking in the reflection of it in a mirror, right? We can't see the actual war itself because all we can see is the downstream effects of it. And that's the hardest part for people to wrap their brains around. But, I just kept asking the question over and over again. Well, if I'm correct about this idea, then it would show up, the reflection of that idea would show up in these events occurring. Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema standing up against Build Back Better and the infrastructure bills, blah, blah, blah. It would show up in these things. It would mean a response from Janet Yellen to support Christine Lagarde's yield curve control between U.S. and European debt. It would show up in all of these various areas. And when the United States finally said, that's it, we're done, we have now decided we can go on offense, not defense. Once Trump is inaugurated, that's what we've done. Cut off USAID, cut off the National Endowment for Democracy, put on the tariffs, do the thing. And now the United States is going on offense. And what's been the response of Europe? We should consider the United States an enemy of Europe. Financial Times. Chrystia Freeland sat there and said we should organize a nuclear
alliance with France
nuclear defense against the United States.
Yes.
Okay? That's been their response. Their response has been nothing short of histrionic overreaction. It is now, and this is the kind, and what they were hoping for is that the political pressure would swell from underneath, that those that are still Europhiles and Anglophiles would put enough political pressure on Trump to get him to stop. So what you're seeing right now is nothing but a classic divide and rule play to undermine Trump's authority. How are you doing that? You created a fiasco with the Epstein files. And then you activate every fucking retard on Twitter, along with British operatives, saying Trump is clearly compromised, and Pam Bondi works for the fucking Mossad, and blah blah, and all this bullshit. And and you're watching the libertarians all screech horribly about the Epstein files. Why are you caring about this? The guy's talking about peace in Ukraine. And you guys are focusing on that. Trump comes out and says, okay, I've got to negotiate with Putin. I'm feeling a little bit of this pressure, right? So what does he say? In response to the Russians making a major offensive against Ukraine in order to take back Kursk and push towards the Dnieper River in order to take the territory that they want to claim in negotiations, which is exactly what the Russians should be doing from a strategic standpoint. What does Trump say? I will sanction the Russians. Why? He's doing that in order to allay the fears that he is some kind of Russian stooge. I literally had a guy in Gainesville at a party tell me that Trump is a traitor for not going after Crimea. And this guy is not a shit lib. But I looked at him and I just turned and I said, Ed, for fuck's sake, this is not a game of diplomacy. We should not give a crap whether Russia has a warm water port. Unless, of course, you're playing the British in this game of diplomacy. Unless, of course, you're playing France in this game of diplomacy. I'm playing the United States. I give a fuck about Crimea. As a matter of fact, in this game of diplomacy, I would be siding with the Russians to take Britain and France off the board because that's how I win.
Exactly.
Politically, Trump can't quite do that yet, so he has to keep playing this game. Now, here's one for you, folks. Did you see that Larry Johnson and Judge Knapp and Mario Nawfal went to Russia, to Moscow?
Yeah.
Did you see this? Okay. FYI, I was just telling Shaun before you came on. Originally, Glenn Greenwald was supposed to go with them, right? And Glenn had to back out. Larry Johnson called me up and asked me if I wanted to sub in for Glenn Greenwald, and said, would I be open to that? Now, the Russians denied, didn't go with me, didn't approve me, but I was on the list to go onto that meeting, to meet with Lavrov and Zakharova and do the week in Moscow. That's to give you an idea. The Russian Foreign Ministry, which we know, has been holding multiple, meetings a year with American journalists and American commentators in order to, be able to have good conversations and clear the air. What is Trump trying to do? He's trying to do diplomacy. And what are we not allowed to do in 2025? We're not allowed to have diplomacy. We're not allowed to discuss weighty matters like, I don't know, nuclear fucking war with the Russians because that's anti-American. So this is the mindset. And that mindset has been fostered in classic fifth generation informational warfare means to create this divide. And it's been done on purpose to radicalize as many people as possible in Canada, Australia, Europe, Germany, specifically the UK, because America refuses to be a good ally. They're trying to shame us. I'm like, this happened the other day. Like Frank-Walter Steinmeier, the president of Germany, was out there complaining about this stuff. And I literally tweeted out, I'm like, I'm sorry, but in 2025, I do not get to be shamed by a fucking German about war in Europe. Sorry, not happening. Yeah, I'm just a mouth-breathing American. Fuck you. And that's the way we have to treat these people. That's the way we have to combat this. They're not allowed to speak in public about these things anymore. They need to be shouted down. They need to be marginalized to the point. No, really? You're arguing for nuclear war with the Russians. Okay. That's your position. Well, no, not really. Yeah, it is. That's your position. We're saying no to that, and we're the unreasonable ones. It's insane. But guess what? It's worked. All the American whiskey's coming off the shelves in Canada. I'll still buy a bottle of 40 Creek Barrel Select, by the way. CC Classic 12. I like it. There's certain Canadian whiskeys I like, and I'll still buy them. I'll even happily buy them with the Canadian dollar at $1.46 and the 10% tariff on it. I don't give a shit. It's still cheaper than the crap that the Scots are putting out at this point. So,
did you know there's a lawyer from Alberta leading a delegation?
Yes, I saw that guy.
he's
that guy's awesome.
He was just on the podcast, lawyer Jeff Rath. Yep, and he's coming back on actually the day after this one airs. And yeah, there's a whole bunch of Albertans specifically. I'm sure they're Canadians too. I should put that out there. They're Canadians that are watching this all play out. And we're just getting played. Like, I mean, we've been staring at all the other nations getting played, and right now we're getting played, right? Like, and it's just wild to watch. I'm really curious. There's been this question, and I don't know if either of you can answer it. So I'm going to throw it out there. It's a very, we have a new prime minister in Canada, right? He's going to be sworn in, Mark Carney. He is tied to every, I mentioned this off the hop. He's tied to, he's the, I don't know. What was the name they called him the other day, folks? I think Brett Olin from Bow Valley Credit Union said, or was it Grant Abraham? One of the two said in England, he was called the Dark Lord when he worked for the Bank of England. That's who our next prime minister is going to be. And I'm just like, maybe I'm overblowing this a little bit, but I'm like, when you got the Dark Lord about to be the prime minister of Canada, I don't feel like I'm overblowing it. I'm just kind of curious though, living in this country, I wonder what other people think. Like, do you guys even care who the next prime minister of Canada is? Are you like, this is a big deal? This is a small deal. Like, Canadians, wake the hell up. Like, or is this, Pierre Poilievre is going to be in a couple months. Don't worry about it.
Well, what I'll say is this, and I'll let Alex pop in. But being American, I think the relationship here I think is important. I do care because Mark Carney does represent the worst of the worst factions within the global oligarchy, and this is a stopgap move in order to push through as much bad shit as possible. What we're finding out from Doge, right, is that the Biden administration was shoveling as much money out the door to newly minted NGOs, using my scare quotes, as possible in order to do the thing, in order to try and get as much money out there to fund all of this fifth generation warfare stuff as possible. Well, it makes perfect sense then that they would put Carney in charge of Canada at this point. I think there's two things going on here. One, I think the British Crown is trying to reassert control over Canada, because I think Carney works for the British Crown first, where Freeland maps to Ukraine and directly to Davos, even though they both have deep ties to both, right? I think there's something else going. I think something going on there, and
if I may, sorry to interrupt,
Sure.
and if I may, Freeland's son's godfather is Mark Carney, and Mark Carney and Chrystia Freeland are from Northern Alberta. It doesn't make any sense on this side. The entire thing just hurts my brain. And on top of it, everyone's wrestling with why now? Why would they run him right now?
Yeah, it's a good question. It has to be that there's I don't know. It's a good question. It is a very good question, because we know that the Canadian banks, for example, were the ones that shut down the debanking stuff during the truckers crisis. That's what brought the Canadian Senate out of irrelevancy for a brief shining moment.
A brief shining moment.
So it's a good question, Shaun. Alex, I don't know if you have a different insight on it. I'd love to hear it.
Well, I have my son harassing me here to my left, which is right on your screen, but it's okay. I think it's great that Carney is going to be the Prime Minister of Canada, because the farther this goes, the harder it is for them to do their dirty deeds in, how do you call it, behind the scenes. It's all coming into the light. Mm-hmm. And so, Carney, the Dark Lord of Finance. I also heard that the Dark Lord of Finance is becoming the Prime Minister of Canada. How curious is that, isn't it? I mean, it's going to be very difficult, in the same way that right now it's becoming extremely difficult for anybody to pretend that Britain is being led around a leash by the evil United States into all these imperial misadventures, just out of sheer loyalty and as a friend and an ally. It's becoming obvious to everybody that Britain is the instigator of the conflicts, and now we're getting to that Lord Acton 150-year-old quote, which he said, "The issue that has swept down the centuries, and which will have to be fought sooner or later, is people versus the banks." And now we're having bankers everywhere. Mario Monti, Mario Draghi, Friedrich Merz. Okay, he's not a banker, but he's a
might as well be
BlackRock. Emmanuel Macron, Mark Carney. It's kind of becoming very obvious. And now his whole so I've followed Mark Carney for many years now. And at first I thought, wow, really smart, really sophisticated. I listened to many of his interviews, speeches, articles he published here and there. But then, as you pay attention, you realize that they're just going on a script. And the man is actually very unimpressive. In fact, I even think that he's somehow like a dullard who's very good at at reading the script. Like he's like one of those like he can read the notes, but he couldn't improvise to save his life.
Right. He's a classical musician, not a jazz musician.
Yeah, exactly. And, in global politics today, there's a lot of moving parts. The old playbooks don't work quite so well. Mm-hmm. And I think it's all going to go down in flames. And then it's going to be much, much clearer to everyone what the actual fault lines are. And I just want to say this. When the Dark Lord becomes the Prime Minister of Canada, that may seem like a bad thing. But folks, we are winning. And remember how people were so worried and so scared about the global pandemic treaty. Remember? Oh my God. Yeah. They're going to sign the global pandemic treaty. We're finished. We're dead. They're going to do this and they're going to do that and blah 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 blah. Well, what happened to that house of cards? So I think that everything is falling, everything is imploding on them. And all these moves where they can no longer even be bothered to conceal their hand are showing that they're very weak, that they're panicked, and they're losing. And it's not just that they're losing because Donald Trump became president of the United States. They're losing because they've already been losing badly up until that point, which is partly why American people elected Donald Trump in the first place. But remember the war in Ukraine. They lost it. Not only did they lose it, they're losing it so badly now that there's nothing they can do about it. And I mean, all of this big talk about, the Europeans uniting and this and that, and will bring the Americans back on. 3 years ago, they had Ukraine intact. They had with the exception of Turkey, the biggest army in Europe. They gave them everything, all the most sophisticated weapon, short of nuclear devices. They gave them all of the NATO's most advanced weaponry. They had their arsenals brimming full, and they and they imposed nuclear sanctions against Russia. The by far the largest packet of sanction ever imposed against any country ever in history, and it all failed. Mm-hmm. And now they are they're defeated. They're just merely making a big show of we can turn this around. The only way they could turn this around is somehow they manage to get rid of Xi, Putin, and Trump. And I'm sure they're going to try. But neither one of those three is naive to this.
Right.
So they're taking countermeasures.
Yeah, no, I agreed, Alex. I think the point is very, very well taken that they are losing. And we've been saying this for a long time now, you and I. Matter of fact, I think probably the entire time we've been coming on Shaun's podcast, and kind of at every turn, they try this, it doesn't work. They try that, it doesn't work. I use the term rearguard actions. From the moment I declared peak Davos, I think in an article back in 2021, when they tried to roll out Omicron variant on us, and it failed. And I went, whoa, you have now reached peak Davos, folks. They have reached the peak of their ability to generate narratives and nudge us towards their more perfect technocratic future. And now it's going to be a series of rearguard actions after this, because the culture has turned against them. The zeitgeist turned against them. I hate to use that term. It's become very overused, but it's true. And the reason why it began to turn was because the United States banking system and its real military decided enough is enough. And we have to just come to grips with that understanding that, I hate to say that, we have to be, we owe a debt to the banksters of the United States, but it's what happened. And they did it for their own reasons. They did it for themselves. They didn't do it to save humanity. Maybe in their own way, maybe some of them understood the real ramifications of what happens if we lose, which is that you lose the ability to do private formation of capital in the world. I was having an argument this morning on our favorite mailing list, Alex. I don't know if you're still on that mailing list, but in response to Larry Johnson, I was arguing a bit this morning with someone who shall remain nameless. And, Larry posted his interesting, his initial thoughts about what he saw over in Moscow this week. And the response from this particular individual was, it's all a Potemkin village, and it's all Russia's this, and the 24% interest rates and all that. And I'm like, none of that matters. I said this morning, none of that matters, because you're looking at a moment when, one, the Bank of Russia has always been a fifth column within Russia, because everybody there is everybody who stabs it was IMF trained. They're all Western trained. Like they're all fifth columnists. When, and at this point, Putin doesn't even care, because when a central bank gets out of the zone of economically viable interest rates, I've made this point in the past when it came to Turkey, for example. I've also made this point in the past when it came to Vietnam and others. And I brought it up this morning. I said, when they get outside of the zone, there's a zone where central bank policy has the most effect, because it's demand for their money as opposed to the existing stock of money. There's plenty of money out there because anybody can issue credit. The central bank can issue credit. Companies can issue credit. Bubble, there's there are the savings in the economy and everything else. When you have the interest rates 21%, that's uneconomic. No one's going to borrow at that rate. And if they do, they're going to borrow $200 in the microfinance market. They're going to put it on the credit cards, which is we have a microfinance industry here in the United States. It's called credit cards. So when that happens, what happens? You have this interest rate up here. Well, other lenders can come in, private lenders can come in and offer business loans at much lower rates. Corporate debt the corporations can offer, money, debt, to lend into the economy. And that's exactly what's happening in Russia. After I heard that argument this morning, I immediately went over to Grok and I took 5 minutes and I said, hey, Grok, talk to me about the rise of private banking and private lending in Russia. Find out, dig deep, go into Russian sources. Like don't use the Financial Times. Go in, and within 5 minutes, it pulls up all sorts of cool information about how private lending in Russia has risen fourfold in the last 3 years. Now, is it fourfold off of a small base? Sure. Does it matter? No. What matters is that competition for credit still matters. That the central bank is not the only source of credit. If this was the case, Turkey would have imploded when Erdogan took interest rates to 30%. Vietnam would have imploded as a country in 2011 when the State Bank of Vietnam went to 16%. Blah, 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 blah. It doesn't, the Russian economy would have imploded when it had to go first to 15% during the ruble crisis or 12, whatever it was, during the ruble crisis of 2015, and now today at 21%. This is not to say that it's not difficult and that this isn't a problem. It is, but it's a manageable problem. And the stupid idea that if we just attack your currency, with a country that has, with a country with leadership that has political power is stronger than financial power, especially in markets where the currency is marginal in the first place. So that's what you have to realize. And there's an asymmetric effect of central bank policy on the actual economy. And this is actually very good news, folks, because it keeps proving over and over and over again that the central bank model of controlling credit is going to end. And what have we been talking about for 7 years, Alex, you and I? The end of the central banking era of human history, which started with the formation of the first central bank in the Netherlands and then perfected by the Bank of England in 1694. That's where we are. And you're watching them go through paroxysms of apoplexy. They just don't understand what they know how to react to that, and they only react to it the way they always do: punish the unbelievers. Period. It's a cult, folks, and all you have to do is deprogram yourself to get out of the cult. And modern economists are all part. Most respectable economists are in the cult. It's the way it works.
Well, when you say respectable, that's how they become respectable, because, you would today, if you didn't know any better, you would think that one of the most respectable economists out there is Paul Krugman, unless you knew something about the subject matter and actually read Paul Krugman, and then you would realize that he's a complete idiot.
Yes.
But there's a reason why he's being, held up as an authority, Whereas there are many economists that are very, very well worth reading and listening to, who are being completely marginalized, because this is exactly the point of the whole game. And I like another big issue is, because we're going to be talking about the systems of governance, and one of the big issues is this this, I don't know how else to call it, but like a sentimental attachment to the concept of democracy that we have in the West. Because that's how we've been raised. That's what we've been listening to all our lives. We've been told democracy good, dictators bad. And, that's almost hardwired now. And so I mentioned in one of two podcasts over the past few days, I mentioned, well, we have to rethink that, because it's not necessarily true. And people push back and they say, no, you're wrong about that. That's not right. And I tell them, okay, well, I'll mention a few things, because I want to step away from what they're telling us to believe and what they're telling us how things ought to be. And I want to look at how things are. And if you tell me that this system is great, I want to see, what does this system deliver? Mm-hmm. So if democracy is so great, so how come liberal democracies are always at war? How come they're always in crises? How come the standards of living are tanking? How come the life expectancy is starting to turn south? And so on and so on and so on. How come if people democratically decide about the fate of their society, how come they're getting all this nonsense like LGBT and pandemics and forced vaccinations and the passes and surveillance and censorship and getting arrested over
and fake meat
and all of this
and drugs and all that, yeah.
and permanent
sounds like Canada. Carry on.
And permanent wars, because that's not what people vote for ever. Nobody wants that, but we're getting it. And the things that we do want, we can't have them, because we want, safe streets and good education and good health. How come we're not getting that? And so I said, I look at how Russia was before Putin and after Putin. And I look at how Libya was before Gaddafi and after Gaddafi. And I look at China under Xi. And then I look at my lived experience, because I was born in a one-party communist system in former Yugoslavia under the strongman Josip Broz Tito. And the first 18 years of my life, I lived under this one-party communist dictatorship. And then now I've lived for 28 years in Monaco, which is not a democracy either. And my lived experience, hands down, life is better under these non-democratic systems. And this shocks people, but I'm just telling them as I see things, This is what I see. And you're telling me, why do you think that dictators are bad? Because you've been brainwashed all your life with stories about dictators doing bad things. Well, you can look at Vladimir Putin and then people say, oh, well, he's a former KGB guy and he killed people and so forth. Yeah, he was former KGB guy, and so what? He killed people. No, you don't have any evidence of that. Nobody in Russia thinks that he killed anybody. And then look at how Russia transformed since he's been in power. It went from a complete rust bucket to a respectable power. Standards of living for the people in Russia has improved. And then Russian own trust in Vladimir Putin and approval rating of his job is higher than for any politician in the West, other than Mark Carney, of course.
Other than the Dark Lord, yes.
Yeah, and these happen to be the people who actually live under his leadership and who get to feel the effect of his leadership on their skin. So if they approve of it, what's our business having an opinion on that? It's their business. And so I say, look at all these cases. And I know that what comes through the media is Putin bad, and you can't find any story that's even remotely balanced in that sense. It's always Putin bad. So when you're so attached to democracies, is it because you know that, or is it because this has been spoon-fed to you all your life? Anyway, I'm not arguing in favor of dictatorship.
Right.
I'm arguing in favor of re-examining what we think we know, because a lot of what we think we know turns out it wasn't quite exactly true. You know, vaccines are safe and effective, and so forth. We need to. And the reason why I bring this up, among other things, is because there seems to be developments in the United States where Trump is starting to kind of take authoritarian powers. And there's even, I don't know if you guys came across this. I came across this secondhand, so somebody told me. I didn't read it directly. But apparently, Thiel, what's his first name? Thiel?
Peter Thiel?
Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel was explicitly stating that what the United States needs is a king. An autocrat.
How very Hoppian of him. I'm going to invoke Hans Hermann Hoppe. You're actually arguing, Alex. You've been arguing the Hoppian position of democracy, the god that failed. The book that Hoppe wrote back in 2004, 2005, and he just went through it. He's like, look, democracies don't work for these reasons, and that the monarchy, he used a property rights argument that the king is a superior form of governance because at least the king has a property right in his people, and people who have property rights generally want to defend their property. And whereas with a democracy, you have nothing but tragedy of the commons at every level. I've never disagreed with Hoppe on this point. It's in order to get the argument, to get the reframing of the argument started. I don't know what the best form of government is. I don't care what the best form of government is. What I care is about systems that are in place that reinforce culture and reinforce what people actually and reinforce the things that people actually want, and the reflection of their wants and needs, not the wants and needs of external players. And what we have through these quote unquote democratic institutions, would, when you push them in any way, manner, shape, or form, are massively anti-democratic. When the people choose wrong, we get a strong man that comes in and says, no, you voted wrong, do it again. Or we're going to game the system in such a way that you wind up with Chrystia Freeland versus her godfather, Mark Carney, or whatever. You know what I mean? Like you wind up with the same situation. Well, you wind up with a non-choice.
What I was going to add in from a socialist country perspective, what I think you're hitting on, Alex, is like these core arguments that we've had built into us. And lots of people, in the middle of COVID, I know for myself and a whole bunch of other Canadians and probably people all across the world, you had to come to terms with, is it that bad? Is it that bad? Is it that bad? And, you think you get through COVID and then you'll never have those moments again where you have to re-examine things. And one of them is Canada first versus Alberta first versus, whatever first you want to put there. And when I look at Canada, you're talking about democracy, right? Supposedly the best form of government under the sun, supposedly. Or so I've been told. We got a eugenics program called MAID that is now 5%, 4.7% of all deaths in Canada is MAID.
How many? I'm sorry?
4.7% of all deaths are MAID.
Dear God, that's like 1 in 20.
Correct.
Yeah, that's
correct.
That's disgusting. Yeah.
Now, if I may carry on, we also have free drugs. We had that thing play out. And BC, people will be like, oh, you can't force people into treatment and all these different arguments. And I'm like, well, listen, giving them free drugs isn't the way. And of course, that's been blown wide open. You've got all these things go on, and we're seeing democracy in action with Trudeau. Now it's going to be Mark Carney. And I'm like, the problem I have with democracy on my end, and this has been why I'm leaning closer and closer to Alberta first, Alberta independence, Alberta whatever, is you look at it and you go, I don't know how to fix our system. Our system is so rigged. And the longer I stare at it, the more rigged it becomes. I mean, I just told you this, like every Canadian should hear, whether you hate liberals or not. If you're a liberal, 250,000 people got disqualified the eve before the election of Mark Carney. It's just like mind-boggling that is even a stat. And we're in democracy, the free nation. We locked up people. We took people's bank accounts away. On and on it goes. And this has just been in the last decade. I mean, it is just what we're living here in Canada. You can walk outside and you can go, it's a free nation. I love this place and everything. But if you stare at this problem for longer than 2 minutes, you start to go, the system we're working on ain't working.
Well, Shaun, when you look at it and you have no idea how to fix it, it's by design. It's made that way. Yes. So that you can only think as far as electing the next person. So, like next election cycle, I'm going to vote for these people. And then the next election cycle, I'm going to vote for those people. And then they always tell you, well, you have to work through the institutions to solve your problem. But the institutions are designed as a maze that you can never get out of. And you can only choose between the candidates that they serve up to you. And they control the both of them. The thing about dictatorships, let's call them autocracies rather, maybe it sounds a little bit less bad, is that, it's a myth that dictators don't care about the public support. Because even dictators are very, very sensitive to public support because they can be toppled and then, they end up like Mussolini, like Ceausescu, like many, many, many of them. Once the anger boils over, it's not like we're going to vote you out and then you're going to go to retire. You're going to retire from political life and you're going to spend more time with your family. No, we're going to hang you by the neck until you're dead. That's what happens, and we're going to kill your whole family. So they are very, very sensitive to the will of the public and whether the people are satisfied with the rule or not. Second thing is that people in autocracies, people know exactly where the buck stops. There's no, these institutions and lawfare and all of this stuff where nobody understands what the hell is going on. Somehow they all end up screwed, but they don't know exactly how. It's just that the result is always obvious. What's not obvious is how exactly it happens, or let alone how exactly to fix it. And that's by design. This is what they call liberal democracies. And this is also why the people who are the most vocal defenders of democracy are exactly these people that gather in Davos and George Soros and Alex Soros and so forth and all these bankers. They are always like bleeding heart defenders of democracy. As though I believe that George Soros is very concerned that I should have power and not him. Give me a break.
Two things, Alex. One, beautiful freaking rant, by the way. Two things. One, about Shaun's point about Trump becoming a quote-unquote authoritarian. What we're going to find out over the course of the next 4 years is what it looks like in the United States when we have a president who actually reads the Constitution and looks at the plenary powers that he actually has and then exercises those. And what you're going to find is that all the whining and like weird crap and and we're going to find out whether a traffic court judge in, Rhode Island is going to be able to stop the president from cutting off USAID. I got news for you. He has that power. It's written right there in article, in the Constitution. He has, what we've had is a series of presidents who have said, you know what? No, in the name of, going along to get along, we're not going to do that. I'm not going to exercise my authority. Why? It's a good question. One, because most of them are globalists that are handpicked by the people who actually run the show. But there's another one. And what do they use? Again, go back to my original rant on this to start the show. Civility is a tactic, folks. It's a debate tactic to get you to stop stating your position. You don't have to, in any way, manner, shape, or form, allow the other person to say, well, you can't talk like that. What's the biggest complaint people have about me? He's blunt and he's rude. Right? Tom's language is awful. He's a dick, yada, yada, yada. Fair. Guess what? It's a tactic, folks. It's true. Guess what? I do it on purpose. Why? To cut through the bullshit. Because civility and false civility is a tactic to defang you, to make you respectable. I'm not respectable. I'm angry with a big chip on my shoulder because a bunch of fucking pedophiles are running around trying to turn the world into all those terrible dystopias that I read as a child and said, I don't want to live like that. So, I'm sorry. Sun Tzu, never fight on ground prepared by your opponent. Civility is ground prepared by your opponent. The European Union, the British, they always are the Northeastern WASPs, all of them, every goddamn one of them wrap themselves in the moral high ground and flowery language like democracy and all these euphemisms for we're just going to gas you and kill you if you don't do what we want you to do. How about fuck you? No. That's the world we're going to get back to. That's the world that Donald Trump is telling you. That's the world that Vladimir Putin's biggest mistake was trying to be civil with a bunch of uncivilized Europeans. And now it's putting my boots on the ground, pushing in. What are you going to do about it? But it's unacceptable. Yeah, exactly. Sorry, it doesn't work that way. We are at the end of consensus politics, and we are back to power politics, because consensus politics was always a lie. It was always a lie. It was always the iron fist inside the velvet glove to make you think that you had a say in the matter when they were literally beating the shit out of you and stealing all your money. I think we started a revolution in this country on a 3% tax on tea. Today, they take 60% of our friggin' time. And they say we're not taxed enough. How about no? How about go fuck yourself and we'll call it even? Like, this is the attitude we all have to have. And I like, at some point, we literally just have to say, that's enough. I mean, and this comes from a deeply held philosophical perspective. No, my life is mine, not yours. You don't own it. And I don't have to listen to you anymore because all you do is tell me how I'm supposed to act as a slave. Again, no. How about no? How about go fuck yourself? So yes, Shaun, Alberta first. Yes, Tom, the great, the People's Republic, the Sunshine Republic of Florida, if necessary. We are under, this is why they are attacking us right now and trying to create a civil war between the falsely civilized and the truly civilized. The ones who say, you know what? I got weapons. I have kept them sheathed because in the interest of peace, in the interest of trying to find common ground with you people. There is no common ground with you people. Your common ground is submit or die. Like, I'm dealing with a bunch of Sith Lords. Peace is a lie. Star Wars was correct. Always. So, like, seriously, that's where we are, and we have to just admit that and move on. And now I'm unsheathing my sword, and you don't like it. And you're going to watch Trump use the presidency in a way that we have not seen. And
we already have.
Yes, we have, and we're going to see even more of it. And it's going to be glorious. I'm going to sit back and I'm going to go, I'm not going to clutch my libertarian fifis over here. I'm just not going to get all upset about it. I can't care. Because at the end of the day, what I hold philosophically about how I want to live my life is one thing. And how we have to deal with the fucking world that we live in is something completely different. And the world we live in today is using my internal philosophical conceit of wanting to treat people decently and live my own life and take responsibility for all of my actions. Yeah, I'd like to do that, but I can't in this world because that's literally been weaponized against me. So I'm at the point of going, no. And I can tell you, every time I talk to somebody who's a tradesman or this or that or a lower middle class, person just trying to get by and do the thing, and they find out what I do and they hear what comes out of my mouth and they go, stop. I don't need to hear anything else. All I need to know is one thing. What? When can we start shooting them? That's the attitude in America right now. And everybody better get their fucking heads around it. Because hell hath no fury about Americans scorned. Because we're the ones who fucked off from Europe. There are no Western values. There is no Judeo-Christian tradition. We're Americans. We're the Europeans who fucking left. And we're Americans now. We're not European. And you can't shame us with the fact that we left. We left because you people suck. Now, you don't like this rant? That's nice. You don't have to do business with us anymore. We don't need anything from you, and we don't owe you anything anymore. Now, you can stand up for yourselves, and we'll be happy to help you stand up for yourselves and throw off the same yoke that we're trying to throw off. Or you can send all our whiskey back across the border. Your choice. Doesn't matter. It's all good because it's over. And that is what we all need to do. And at the same time, none of these people get a chance to speak anymore. And when they do start to speak, and they, well, actually, no. You know what? Fuck you. You wanted to put everybody who didn't get vaccinated into a camp. You wanted to cut my child's dick off because he had a thought this week. How about no? And that's where we all need to be. That's the mindset we need to be in. And once we're there, there's nothing they can do to us. And it all falls apart. So, all right, that's enough. I can do this for another 20 minutes, but I think we get the point.
Mr. Luongo, you gotta be bottling up this stuff and bring it to Calgary in May.
Dude, I have an infinite well of this anger. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding?
What Alex is alluding to, and we haven't talked about, but you both are coming to Calgary May 10th of this year.
That's what I was alluding to.
Yeah,
yes.
That's going to be, and there's a whole cast of characters, right? Martin Armstrong in attendance, which should be interesting,
I spoke to Marty the other day for the first time. We were on the podcast with Danny, and afterwards, I was chatting with Martin in email, and I said, looking forward to seeing you in Calgary, and I'm going to have him on the podcast later in the week, and we're going to, build a relationship. He said, that's if, of course, they don't close the border between us and Canada between now and then. I'm like,
he's not wrong.
I know. Well, he's not. He's not at all.
Yeah. It's not a joke. I already turned down 3 opportunities to go visit in the UK, because I thought I can't take the risk of being detained and having my devices taken away from me. And I know too many people. I'm talking about between 1 and 2 dozen people that I know who got detained. A friend of mine who used to live in Monaco, she got detained for 3 days. She got detained at Heathrow, and she was in detention for 3 days. And then, after the 3 days lapsed, they threw her out of the country. She got a job for a British firm. She used to be a Barclays banker, one of those people who got paid like £1,000 a day. And she got a job with, I don't know what company in London. And before her papers came through, the immigration papers, work permit, residence, whatever, you're supposed to get there, they already sent her on a business trip somewhere to Europe, right? And then when she was flying back in at Heathrow, they say, who paid for your trip? She's like, my company that I work for. And then they were like, sorry, your papers are not in order. Ihre Papiere not in order. And after 3 days of free detention, she got thrown out, lost her job. That's the free world. That's the liberal democracy that we're talking about. See, the United States came into existence exactly as a reaction to this kind of abuse. And we're right back there. We're right back in that.
I know. I was going to say, Alex, I have been offered by many people to come to Europe, and from friends and contacts and whatnot, and every one of them I said, that's nice, but I can't take the risk of being detained. I mean, honestly, Dexter White warned me about going to Canada 2 years ago, the first time for the first Cornerstone. He was like, dude, don't say anything while you're there. The freaking Mounties will come after you. I mean, he was worried about it then. So
it's
Canada.
Yeah. Well, it's wild to me because I played hockey in Finland and I remember being terrified of the border. I was just like, do I want to get close to that border? And today, I think I'm more interested in going to Russia than I am the UK. Right? I hear the stories and I'm like, I'm probably getting detained if I go to the UK. I'm just going to assume. Maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong. But I look at it and I hear the stories. I see everything happening there. And I'm like, that's pretty unnerving. And what a wild thing to say. Because 5 years ago, for sure, I would have said UK safe, Russia bad.
Right.
And then I brought two guys to talk about the complete opposite in 2023. What a wild thing to do in a little town of Lloydminster. Anyways, May 10th, Calgary, folks. If you're interested to hear some people talk a little differently, that's going to be a time. And you can down in the show notes, if you're on the podcast, you can get tickets there. If you're on Twitter, just go to the top of it's the pinned post on my handle. So Tom, Alex, as always, appreciate you guys hopping on and doing this. We won't wait 2+ months to do it again. We'll have you on soon enough. Appreciate you guys giving me some time today.
Always a pleasure, Shaun. Always warm greetings to everybody in Canada. I always love to visit, and I look forward to it in May.
And despite the mouthful of invective that I've hurled at the entire world today, I am also looking forward to deepening relationship with my my Northern Canadian or Western Canadian brethren. I speak fully from the position of it's the United States' burden at this point, and to expiate our sins of thinking that we would be an empire to help free the Western world from this. That's where this is coming from. If you don't want to be freed, that's fine. That's your choice. But the people I've spoken to in Alberta, and the 2 times I've been there, all I hear is exactly that. That's what they want.
But that's the thing, everything we're talking about, it's not to do with people. It's to do with the governing structures.
Of course.
And the people everywhere are about the same. You always have a little bit of cultural idiosyncrasies. Sure. Italians are like this, and the French are like that, and the Russians are like this, and the Germans are like that. What's the idiosyncrasy of the Brits? They have bad teeth, and they're really, really, really nice. That's their idiosyncrasy. So, I want to make sure that, whoever's listening to this understands that, because it's always the British. It's not,
it's the oligarchy.
It's a label, but it's the oligarchy, right? Same thing in Canada. And anyway, so
the last final point of this to make this abundantly clear is that, and what we've been trying to elucidate here is that we have people who have been gaslit into believing something that's not true about each of these groups of people. That we were among them. Yeah, I used to be one of them, and I'm like, we've all been there, folks. And the process of waking up to the reality of the divide and rule play is to realize that it's not Trump that's the problem, or Viktor Orban, or even Mark Carney. It's at the end of the day, it's you believing in the systems that they've created to make you think that there are divisions between us when there really aren't. Like at the end of the day, we all want the same things. We all want to get up in the morning, teach our kids, go coach our kids' t-ball team, and go have a barbecue, and and bitch about politics. Like that's what we want to do. you know, but I get together with people all over the world and I play friggin' video games, and we don't give a shit whether you're an American versus a Canadian versus, you know, anything else. All we care about is whether you can heal and whether you can tank and whether you can, you know, down the boss. You know what I mean? Like, can we work together for a common shared goal and have a good time while doing it? In the case of a video game, that's the goal. At the end of the day, it's all of those things.
Everybody should remember the Christmas truce of 1914. That's the story of humanity. That's the one that I would make it into national holiday in all of the Western world.
There you go.
Well, it is kind of a national holiday in most of the Western world because it's Christmas. No, it's already there. Okay, I'll have to rethink that.
Well, we can add that into how
we can highlight it.
We can add that into, layer that into how we sit down when we sit down for Christmas dinner with our family and friends.
Yeah.
Hey, let's call a truce. And what do they always tell you? No, confront your evil MAGA uncle. What do they say? Go in there and confront him. Get in his face about Trump. They've been doing this shit for 7 years now. It's insane.
Yeah.
Because they have to destroy everything good and beautiful in the world, because they themselves are ugly and evil on the inside. And go look at them. Go look at their faces. Go look at how their bodies become on the outside what they are on the inside. Remember, Star Wars was always right. Palpatine, true face, eventually showed itself.
Gentlemen, we got to finish on Star Wars. I mean, that's a perfect ending.
Who are the Jedis? Who are the Jedis?
Oh, unfortunately, that's a longer discussion.
We'll continue on next time. Thanks, gentlemen.